Hello, and welcome to today's video. Today, I want to talk to you about POTS. So to start, I'm going to share a little bit about my journey, my experience with having POTS, how bad it was, the times I very nearly passed out, and the time period that I experienced this for. Then we're going to take a little bit of a look at what POTS is and how it works. Because again, if you're watching my videos, you know that I really like to understand a problem before we try to solve it. Because if you don't understand it, the solution doesn't make any sense. But if you understand a problem very clearly, the solution comes very easily. And then I'm going to walk you through how I got to the point where I am now completely free from POTS-like symptoms. And basically all signs of dysautonomia are either completely gone or significantly reduced. So if you click this video, you probably have POTS or you know somebody with POTS. You know what it's like. It often goes hand in hand with a sensitivity to heat. Heat can often make this worse. Electrolyte imbalances and problems with hydration and staying hydrated. And then obviously the dreaded blackout tunnel, where going from laying to standing, or for me, when I first experienced this, trying to get out of a very hot bath, I saw this tunnel closing in on me. My vision was going dark and it had all of these little red and blue spots and it was woo, and my vision like really zoomed out and I was right on the brink of consciousness. And that was the first time I ever experienced it, and that was terrifying. I thought I was going to die. And then obviously, as you know, when this kind of acute POTS incident happens, heart rate goes extremely high. So I went from passing out to feeling like I'm going to have a heart attack. And that was just not a very nice experience, very unpleasant day for me. So that's pretty much extreme as it gets. You know, at the severe end of POTS, you've got literally the body cannot cope. It cannot put the blood in the brain and you will pass out. I never quite passed out, as I was able to very quickly lay down on the floor. That kind of came as an instinct. I didn't know what I was doing at the time. That was the first time I'd ever experienced it. But we're going to talk a little bit more about that in the symptoms management portion of today's video. So I experienced POTS at this same level of severity for a period of about 3 or 4 years. Anytime I went from laying to sitting, sitting to standing, was a very carefully controlled, graduated process of patiently allowing my body to adapt into that new posture, providing it a little bit of padding so that it could adapt to that new stress that I was putting on it. And I've experienced a lot of symptoms, but this is definitely on the scarier end because, you know, passing out, feeling like you're going to have a heart attack, they're not very, very pleasant. And I just want to let you know where I am now to give you some context. So on a daily basis, I don't experience any POTS-like symptoms. Sometimes I still have some shoulder and neck issues. And if I go for an extended period of time without an osteopathic treatment, I might experience some POTS-style symptoms if I, say, for example, I'm laying down and then I stand up and put my hands above my head. I might feel a little bit of, not quite like I'm going to pass out, but I feel a little bit of like maybe like fuzziness in my brain. I don't feel perfect. And if I were to do that when I'm fasting, maybe that would be exacerbated. But that's not because I have POTS. That's just what happens when you need a cervical adjustment, or when you're fasting, your body is experiencing a lot of stress and your blood pressure is really low. So although they are POTS style symptoms, they really don't feel the same as they did back then. And other than that, I can exercise, I can train, I can go from laying to standing up. I could lay down, stand up, hands above my head, no dizziness, no disorientation, no like head pain or headache, nothing. Heart rate will increase a little bit, but it's completely adaptive and I feel fine. I feel perfectly fine. Now, I always think it's really important to emphasize where I've been and where I am now, because it's really scary when you go on like Reddit or in Facebook groups and you hear people that have been struggling with this for 10 or 20 or 30 years. And because they've been experiencing it for such a long time period, they develop the belief that this is like a permanent condition, that this is irreversible. And that's just simply not true. This isn't just my experience. I've seen lots of other people reverse this as well. So if you buy into that belief that this is not a solvable problem, then you're probably going to stop looking for the solution. And I would really hate that, because having POTS really negatively influences your quality of life. And I really want you to have a great life where you can go and have adventures and you can have a family and buy that homestead and raise the chickens, like whatever the hell it is that you actually want to do. I want to help facilitate you being able to do that. So let's take a little bit more of a deeper look at what POTS is and how it works. So in essence, what's happening is POTS is your body's ability to adapt to orthostatic stress. So this is like the stress of going from laying to standing. This is the body's attempt to respond to that stress, but the response is insufficient. And very often what you will see is low blood pressure, which means the body then has to compensate for that low blood pressure by increasing the heart rate significantly. This is why you'll usually see like a tachycardia kind of presentation, where the heart rate increases a lot. And this is the body trying to compensate through a different mechanism. But if we could increase the blood pressure so that the blood pressure was in a healthier range, you might find that that tachycardia-like event doesn't have to be so significant. You will still see an increase in heart rate because it's adaptive. And again, you're going from laying to standing. We need to get the blood into the brain somehow. And the blood pressure might increase and the heart rate might increase, but they should do so in a very balanced and coordinated way that leaves you feeling good. Whereas what's happening in POTS is that's just not happening. You're not getting this balanced, coordinated response, and the body isn't able to adapt to this. So the common thing that I see here is this is a symptom of dysautonomia, and dysautonomia is just about always triggered or caused by chronic stress. Now, when I say chronic stress, a lot of people first think it's about work stress, or it's about family stress. It's about being a wife with a husband and 2 kids, or having that really stressful job or that extra project, or worrying about money. It's not just about emotions. Sure, emotions are important. I'll be the first person to say that, but it's really important that when I say stress, you don't just jump to that type of stress. We also have to look at physiological stress, because the body's response to emotional stress and physiological stress is the same. It's the same response. And too often people are chasing these like work and life stress when actually there's a lot of physiological dysfunction that's causing stress in the body. And that's actually what's feeding the dysautonomia, which is what's feeding the POTS. So the most common cause I see of this chronic physiological stress is chronic toxicity. So almost always, and probably you're in this camp, if you're experiencing POTS or any type of dysautonomia, there's some type of environmental toxin exposure that you have experienced. This could be mold or a water damaged building, like it is in my case. This could be like a root canal or amalgam fillings in your teeth. This could be some other type of environmental chemical exposure, glyphosate, things like this. Also, in a way, your gut flora, when it becomes dysbiotic, let's say you have like lots of candida or clostridia or Klebsiella, or even something like E. coli that produces endotoxin. This can become a source of chronic toxicity. And this is even coming from the gut, it's leaking into the body over and over again and creating this chronic toxic exposure, even though it's coming from within inside ourselves. More often than not, we have one of the first things like the mold exposure, the dental issues, the environmental toxins, and then that disrupts the flora in the gut, and then the gut also becomes a contributing source of toxicity. So then you've usually got both of these things happening at the same time. And all of these toxic chemicals coming into the body is stress. They are inflammatory. They create reactive oxygen species and a reactive oxygen cascade. They cause a lot of damage on a cellular level, on a mitochondrial level. They create organ dysfunctions. And all of these things are stress. These are just as harmful for your body as the emotional types of stress. And I'm sure even if you go to your conventional doctor, they'll tell you stress is really important that we look at stress. Stress is the biggest cause of disease, and it 100% is. But it's not all emotional stress. A lot of it is physiological. And what you're seeing in POTS is going from laying to going to standing up. This is stress. You're putting physiological stress on your body. And what it's saying is, I already have so much stress, I cannot cope. I cannot adapt. I cannot respond to this appropriately because the quantity of stress that the body is experiencing surpasses its ability to cope and manage with that stress. And then you see dysautonomia and POTS as a consequence. So if we're thinking long-term solution, we need to identify the source of this chronic stress. If that is a work environment, if that is somebody that you're living with in your household, yes, you need to sort these things out. But if this is a mold exposure, if this is a dental infection, if this is a gut dysbiosis that is just spewing toxins into your body, whatever it is, we need to address it. Because if you don't address that underlying source of chronic toxicity, that stress is never going to disappear and it's always going to be there. And the body is always going to be trying to adapt to that stress. And the solution to this whole problem is basically remove that stress component for a long enough period of time and the body will recalibrate itself. Now, I know that doesn't sound like super sexy. You know, there are lots of people that make YouTube videos that are like, oh, I did this like $4,000 FMT and I bought this 1,500 euro biofeedback device or nervous system retraining thing. And like, I know these like things sound really sexy, but honestly, if you're really looking at holistic healing and you want to do this like properly and permanently, you really have to cut out all of this like peripheral like noise stuff. You have to dial in on the basics, understand the dysfunction, correct the dysfunction, and be patient. Now, I know how unsexy that is. It's plain, it's vanilla, it's not really what you want to hear, but this is what works. And I know this because I did it. I spent money on all these other things. I had cupboards full of supplements. I did all this fancy stuff, but really it's identify dysfunction, address dysfunction, be patient, body fixes itself. It's really as simple as that. But in the short term, there are also some other things that we can do to help your body, because when your body is struggling to adapt to stress, not only is that initial stress a source of stress, but when the body cannot adapt, that is also a source of stress. So we need to provide some padding. We need to support your body so that it's able to function as best as it possibly can. And we support it in all of these areas of stress that it's experiencing, that it's struggling to adapt to. So just to give you a super basic idea of what this looks like, if you know that you have POTS, stop laying down and then standing straight up. That's not helping. You're putting such a big physiological demand on your body that it simply can't keep up. And that creates a big stress. Whereas if you did the same thing over a period of 5 to 7 minutes, and I know, again, not sexy, but it works. You will remove this overwhelming stress stimulus and you'll provide a gentle guiding towards this stress stimulus, and the body will be better able to adapt. One of the best things that we can do is look at hydration, because blood volume is going to directly influence your POTS-like symptoms. Again, POTS is coming because we're changing the orthostatic position of the body. We're going from laying to standing, and the body needs to get blood to the brain. If you can't get blood to the brain, you die. So if the body's trying to get blood to the brain and it can't, it will kind of kick this mechanism in where it will make you pass out. Because what's going to happen when you pass out? You stop being stressed because you lay on the floor. You know, you're standing and now you've fallen. You're on the floor. You don't need to have so much blood pressure. You don't need to have such a high heart rate to get that blood where it needs to go. So if we can increase your blood volume overall, it's going to make it easier for your body to adapt to this stress. It does not going to have to increase the blood pressure so much, and it's not going to have to increase the heart rate so much because the volume of blood is higher. But this isn't just as simple as drink more water, because, as you probably well know, you drink water and what happens? You wee it straight back out. It's not helping. Again, because when you're in a chronic stress state, the body is burning through sodium and potassium like in no other state. These are two really important nutrients, especially for your kidneys and your adrenal glands. And these are a really almost like foundational part of your stress response. In a way, literally the function of your adrenal gland is to adapt and respond to stress. So if you have POTS, if you have dysautonomia, 100% of the time you have adrenal fatigue as well. Because if your adrenals were strong and robust, you would have these stresses and you would just produce stress hormones and your body would be able to adapt. So this is why just drinking more water isn't going to help. Now, you've probably heard of something called an adrenal cocktail. I'm actually not a fan of this personally, because there's a better way to do it. So with regards to sodium, what I found is best is add a good quality salt, so a sea salt or a rock salt. Add this to your food according to taste. We spend thousands doing different lab tests to measure different vitamins and minerals and to look at what's going on in our gut microbiome, but we forget that our taste is a very valuable form of biofeedback. If you need more sodium, when you put salt on your food, it will taste bland. You should add more salt until it tastes good. This is biofeedback. Your body is so intelligent and it's communicating to you. We just need to learn how to listen. If you're adding salt to your food and it already tastes quite salty, just have it on the saltier side. Don't overdo it. Don't go crazy. But if you know that overall you have low blood volume, salt it on the saltier side, and over time, your body will retain more of this sodium and you'll have more of an appetite for salt, because it's really important that we have the water in your body in the correct balance with the electrolyte minerals like the sodium and the potassium. So this is really important. Then there are a lot of other ways you can do this. Like you could put some sodium, some salt in like chicken broth or chicken stock and drink that. Again, you don't have to add loads, just add enough so that it tastes good. That's the key. I'm not really a big fan of just adding salt to water. I don't find that very effective for me. I don't really like it. And you're kind of overriding that biofeedback mechanism. I really think that the body is so profoundly intelligent. It's what's doing all of the healing anyway. Like we should be using it as much as possible. We need to use your symptoms. We need to use how salty your food tastes. We need to use your sensory inputs as really important biofeedback. So add salt to your food so that it tastes good. That is the key. Next, potassium. This one is a little bit more difficult. The RDA for potassium is between 3,500 and 4,700 milligrams, which is like 3.5 to nearly 5 grams. And if you don't know what foods contain potassium, I can guarantee you are not consuming enough potassium. It's one of these things that is actually very difficult to do if you don't know what you're doing. It's also very difficult to supplement with potassium. Because potassium is such an important electrolyte with regards to hydration and kidney function, supplement companies aren't allowed to put more than 97 milligrams in most countries in an electrolyte supplement. So you're getting basically 1/47 of what you need to get of your overall RDA of potassium if you take an electrolyte supplement. This includes things like the electrolytes that you buy at the shop or electrolyte powders. I haven't checked, but probably things like Element, again, they have a very low dose, because if you were to just take like 3 grams in one go, like kills your kidneys, your electrolytes go completely crazy, like it can really mess your body up. So the best way to do this is getting it from food. Now, if you're on a carnivore diet, this is going to be a challenge because we don't really get enough potassium from animal products. The best sources of potassium, this is my template that I would follow, is coconut water is amazing. If you drink 1 liter of coconut water, you're going to get 2,000 milligrams of potassium. That means you're nearly halfway there already. I actually can remember one time my brother was in hospital and he had very low blood potassium levels, and they were giving him IV fluids. They were trying to get his potassium up and they just couldn't do it. And my dad went and bought 1 bottle of coconut water and he drank it and his potassium levels came up. And the doctors were like, wow, that worked so much better than whatever we were trying to do. So coconut water, amazing. If you have blood sugar issues, you might need to be careful with it. But if you don't, I don't have blood sugar problems. I can easily drink a liter of coconut water a day. I feel great. It helps so much, especially if you struggle with like heat intolerance or you're living in a warmer climate or you're sweating for any reason. It's really, really helpful. Your other best sources are avocados. So avocados average between 1,000 to 1,600 milligrams. So if you had an avocado and a bottle of coconut water, you're almost there. And other than that, anything that's green could be really helpful. So you might struggle to get enough if you're getting it from salads and things like that. If you were to do like green juices, these are actually very high in potassium. This could be very, very helpful. And things like bananas have a little bit as well. But again, a banana has only about 500 milligrams. So you'd have to eat like 9 bananas a day to get enough. But the approach that I like to take is to try to get a little bit from all of these different sources. And if you're really leaning on that coconut water, it really helps. I work with a lot of people that have these kinds of problems, and really without coconut water, it's very challenging to get the potassium high enough because you can't really supplement it. And then also you have histamine intolerance and other food sensitivities. Makes it really hard to tolerate. Things like avocado high in histamine, also can be high FODMAP. Banana can be high in histamine as well. And it's really, really tricky. And then if you look at animal foods, yes, animal foods do have some, like pork is slightly higher than some of the other foods. But anytime you have animal products, you're going to be putting salt on it. And it's about having enough salt and potassium. We need both. And what's going to happen if you salting your meat is going to influence the ratio of the salt to the potassium, and it's not going to give you the right ratio. So we really need a source of potassium to boost this level up. So that's your first tip. Get your hydration sorted. It's not just about drinking more water. It's about getting your sodium and your potassium to be correctly balanced. That can be a challenging thing to do. If you need help with it, reach out, shoot me an email, support@williamdickinson.co.uk. I'd love to give you a hand with it. Next, we can try to control your environment. Obviously, removing the environmental toxicity is the most important thing, but there are other things in the environment that we can do as well. For example, controlling your temperature. One of the things with dysautonomia is your body probably struggles to regulate its temperature. Maybe you can't handle the heat or the cold. Either way, it's causing stress to your body. So for this time, it can be really helpful to just pad your environment out and support it in regulating its temperature. So if it's colder, make sure you're wearing enough clothes. I was living in England at the time, so I bought a pair of thermal underwear to wear under my clothes, and that was really helpful. And if you go back to look at some of my original videos, some of my first videos, you'll see I'm wearing my thermal underwear underneath. And then if you're in a warmer climate, maybe we need to be looking at like air conditioning or some other ways to keep your body cooler. It's really important that we control these environmental stressors, at least in the short term, whilst the body corrects itself. It's also really important that we tackle that adrenal fatigue piece as well, because your adrenals are the foundation of your ability to respond to stress. And 2 of the non-negotiables when it comes to recovering from adrenal fatigue are we need a caloric surplus and we need a sleep and rest surplus. These 2 are absolutely essential. If you're going to try and recover adrenal fatigue and you're also going to try and lose weight by doing calorie restriction, or you're going to do it working 18 hours a day and you're not going to get enough sleep, I would say you'd have more luck becoming an astronaut. It's extremely unlikely that you're going to be able to heal adrenal fatigue if you are in a caloric deficit and a rest deficit. I've worked with thousands of people with this. It just simply doesn't happen. So these should be your absolute 2 highest priority. You could also look at some type of adaptogenic support. Like I've got some ashwagandha here. I use this, especially when my body's a little bit more stressed. I couldn't tolerate it at the time when I had POTS, but I have seen a lot of people see improvements in dysautonomia and pot-style symptoms using adaptogenic herbs. So some other good options there in that adaptogen category are any of those medicinal mushrooms, so things like reishi, chaga, cordyceps, all of these types of medicinal mushrooms. You could also look at rhodiola, astragalus, tulsi tea. These can all be really effective adaptogens depending on the individual. So you can experiment with some of these. Just to circle back on that caloric surplus point, it is also really important that we have enough micronutrients. So calories, very, very important, but it's also important that we cover our nutritional bases. One of the things that can help the adrenals a lot are B complex vitamins. And this is especially true if you, like me, have any methylation defects. So things like MTHFR, C677T, or the other one, or if you've got the like MTR or MTRR mutations, B12 could be really important for you. For most people, just an overall good B complex or like multivitamin, multimineral should cover most of your bases, but providing these resources can be really, really helpful because they strengthen the adrenals, and then the adrenals are better equipped to handle and adapt to that stress, which means we've got a little bit more in the tank to adapt to the stress of going from sitting to standing, laying to standing. There comes a point in this journey where we need to start pushing that stress a little bit as well. It's really important that we make sure we've covered all of these bases and we have a really safe environment. We're providing a lot of padding and a lot of support to adapt to these stresses. But at some point through this journey, we do need to incorporate things like heat exposure, things like maybe sauna or hot baths, Epsom salt baths. These can be really helpful. They also provide nutrients, they support detox. Again, working on pulling this chronic toxicity out of the body, which is what the cause of this dysautonomia is in the first place. But we have to make sure we balance these things with the strength of the nervous system and of the adrenal gland. This is also true of things like working out. Almost every single person that I know that's experienced some type of POTS or dysautonomia also has cervical issues, or they have an old injury, or they have like neck, back, shoulder problems. It's so important for the long term that we work on correcting muscle imbalances. Because if there are parts of your body that are in chronic tension, this is a signal that is being sent to your nervous system all the time saying, we are not safe, we are in stress, we are not safe, we are in stress. And again, that is going to contribute to this overall stress load that your body is experiencing. Not to mention, being in chronic pain is very emotionally stressful. Having been in chronic pain for over 10 years now, and I'm still dealing with some chronic pain, I know that it really can build up over time. And yes, there is some level of desensitization to it. But sometimes when you've got lots of like work stress and your digestion's not good and you're sick and then your back goes out as well, it's just like, it's just too much and it really can get to you. So we need to make sure that we provide this cushioning and this padding and this support. But it's also important to understand that once we've done this, the next step actually requires us to push a little bit harder. We need to try to bring in some of this hormetic stress. So this is stress that we expose our body to that actually has a beneficial outcome at the end. And that's where things like saunas and functional training and exercise and stuff like that kind of comes into there. You could also think about it in another angle. For example, a lot of people dealing with this, they stop working. It's really important that we can get you back to work again because you need a purpose. You need a reason to be alive. You need connection with other individuals. All of these things are stressful, but they do have benefits. You can make money. You can be exposed to new sources of information. Connection is so important. So at some point, we have to try to invite some more of this into our life as our body becomes more able to tolerate stress. So I hope this video helps to equip you a little bit more to handle the POTS-like presentation that you might be dealing with. Just know that you really need to be playing the long game with this. You might not see changes in a week or 2 weeks, but you will be blown away by the kind of reversal in these symptoms that's possible in a year to 2 years. I'm not saying it's going to have to take a year to 2 years for you to start feeling better, but you really need to be thinking about this on a long-term timescale. Because if you reach the point where you have POTS and dysautonomia, your body is deeply in debt. It has experienced far more stress than the body is ever supposed to experience. And pulling itself out of that debt is a difficult process, and you really need to make sure that you layer in the correct supports, that you learn how to be compassionate and gentle with yourself, and that you can accept that you need to be patient through this process. Almost every single person that I work with that experiences these kinds of things are these type A personalities, push really hard, burn myself out, be everything for everyone other than for myself, just completely burning the candle at both ends, pouring your cup into every single thing you do. And this is here as a lesson to make you slow down, to learn how to attune to yourself and to take care of yourself and to put your needs first. But some people will just refuse to learn this, and then they'll experience POTS and dysautonomia for the rest of their lives. I don't want that to be you. So it's really important that you acknowledge this as well. So briefly to summarize, identify the source of chronic toxic exposure. Make sure that we work on hydration, especially the sodium and the potassium. It's not just about drinking more. Provide extra padding supports from your environment. For example, control your temperature. Maybe avoid doing things like flying in an aeroplane or being on long journeys or overcommitting yourself to things that are going to cause you a state of depletion. And then develop some compassion and attunement to yourself. Learn how to pace yourself. Play the long game. Don't expect to see a change in 3 or 4 days, but you'll be amazed at what's possible in a couple of months. And don't let anyone tell you that this is for life, because if you let them tell you that, you'll begin to believe it, and then you'll accept it. And it's not true. I've recovered. I've seen hundreds of other people do it as well. So anyone that has that kind of mindset or mentality, remove them from your life as quickly as possible, because they are not going to help your healing. That's everything for me today. I hope it helps. Take care, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.